Hello and welcome to Tech Deals Game Performance Review Fallout 4. We're playing Fallout 4 today on the EVGA GeForce GTX 1080 for the win graphics card. But wait, we're testing both 1 and 2 cards in SLI Scalable Link Interface. We are playing today at 2160p Ultra HD 4K resolution, ultra detail, and yes, VSync is turned on. More about that in a minute. Both of these cards are installed in my custom build Intel i7-6800K running at 4.2 GHz. This is a custom build machine I've done a number of videos on. A link to that full playlist is in the description below, including a video of the build itself and many other videos. There's 32 gigabytes of DDR4 3000 MHz RAM, and it's all installed on the Asus X99-A2 motherboard. Fraps was used for the minimum, maximum, and average game performance numbers that you're going to see at the end of this video. However, it was not used to record the actual video itself. Instead, NVIDIA's Shadowplay was used to record the in-game footage. NVIDIA Shadowplay does reduce the overall frame rate by between 5 to 10%, and the numbers reported at the end of this video are with Shadowplay on. I have not adjusted them in any way, so you can add 5 to 10% back to those numbers if you wish to get the non-recording performance numbers. The numbers in red at the top left of the screen are from MSI Afterburner. This is the non-SLI run. You can see the GPU 1 is currently at 99%. GPU 2 is at 0%. Why? Because it's disabled. We're only using one of our graphics cards. So that first percentage is the actual amount of the compute power of the chip that's being used. The next item, 77 degrees Celsius, that's the temperature of the GPU chip. Then we have our fan speed, about 2700 RPM. This is a updated BIOS from EVGA that increases the fan speed curve and runs the card a little bit cooler. You can also see our clock rate. We are currently at just under 2 GHz clock speed. That is faster than the standard clock speed. I have not manually overclocked this. That is the NVIDIA GPU Boost running, so it's automatically overclocking. GPU 2 is disabled, which is why the numbers are down at 0. The memory 1 and the memory 2 are the VRAM, the video RAM that's installed on the graphics cards themselves. That's not your main system RAM. The GTX 1080 has 10 gigahertz RAM, but it's DDR, it's really 5 gigahertz. That's what the 5000 megahertz is. You have to double it for DDR to 10. And we are using 4.3 out of the 8 gigabytes of VRAM on the card. The CPU load, we're currently at 16, 17%. It's not very high. We have a 6-core, 12-thread processor. So if we were at 50%, we'd be using all 6 of our real processing cores. Now, this game does not use that many processing cores. The Broadwell-E chip is not necessary for Fallout 4. A Skylake quad-core would be plenty fine. That's not the purpose of the Broadwell anyway. Gaming is not what it's for, but it's plenty. It's running at 52 degrees. It's quite cool. We are using 8.5 gigabytes of main system RAM. Not too bad. I would definitely recommend at least 16. 8's not quite enough anymore. And then we are running in DirectX 11, and you can see we're currently getting 34, 35 frames per second. Not really great. It's okay, but it's not great. Not to worry. After this run, we are going to see how well it runs in SLI with both cards activated. It is worth noting that if you only have a single GTX 1080 and you want to play Fallout 4 at 4K, you can. You just really can't do it at ultra detail. We are out in the wilderness, there's not much going on. If you get into the populated areas in the cities, the performance falls off a cliff really, really quickly. This would not be at all acceptable in some of the dense areas of this game. However, you can turn the detail from ultra down to high. You can turn God Rays off. There's a couple of setting changes you can make that will make a huge difference to the overall performance. So it is playable on a GTX 1080, just not with the details cranked up. If you want the details cranked up, well, that's what SLI is for. Yes, this does scale fairly well, and you will see the difference both in the actual gameplay, the real-time frame rate, and I'll show the numbers at the end. We're almost to the end of this run here. There's just a few seconds left. Then I'm going to fade it out, and then we will start the SLI run. As impressive as this minigun is, these robots are quite challenging. They can take a lot of damage. I actually ended up dying here, mostly because I'm an early level character, I don't have a lot of armor, and I'm probably attacking guards I shouldn't be. How does this run in SLI? Now this is both cards activated. Take a look at the upper left hand corner of the screen and you're going to notice a couple of things. First of all, both cards now show usage. Notice that the GPUs are not at 100%. VSync is turned on, it has to be. The game engine that Fallout 4 runs in does not work properly at over 60 frames per second. Yes, there are manual tweaks you can use to force it in INI files, but the physics engine doesn't work properly. And so the reason you're seeing both GPUs at well below 100% is because once they've rendered the 60 frames per second, there's no need for them to run at full speed. You can see the temperature of both graphics cards, and you see the top graphics card, the fan, is turning much faster than the bottom one, 2000 RPM to just over 1300. Why? Think about how two graphics cards are installed. One is on top of the other. The card that is on top is much hotter because it's absorbing a lot of the heat from the card beneath it. Now in my particular installation, there is a 1-slot gap between the two cards. So there is some airflow between them. However, one hot card directly above another is always going to run warmer, and so the fan runs faster. It is noisier. If you're not wearing headphones and you don't have the speakers turned up, it is noticeable. The 3400 RPM is noticeable compared to the 1400 RPM. Memory, you can see that we are using both GPUs now. Both are at 5 gigahertz, and we're currently at about 3.7 gigabytes of VRAM usage. The 8 gigabytes is not going to be a limitation in any way, shape, or form. It will be on some future titles, maybe, possibly, but 8 gigabytes is still fairly new. I'm not worried about it. Oh, there's a guy. A minigun to the back. That's not very nice. Look at our CPU usage. 13%. Oh, there's a jump to 27, back down to 14. Again, remember there's 12 cores. 50% is 6. 25% CPU usage is just 3 cores. A quad core is plenty for Fallout 4. And then our main system RAM usage is just over 8 gigabytes. As I mentioned before, if you are still playing in 2016 games like Fallout 4 with 8 gigabytes of total system RAM installed, I highly recommend you upgrade to 16. It's less than $40, and it smooths out the performance of everything you do, especially when you're playing games like this. Absolutely, your average frame rate won't drop much from only having 8, but it's the dips, it's the overall smoothness. Windows has to swap to your hard drive or your SSD, it has to compress RAM, and it reduces performance. With additional RAM, it doesn't have to do that. Look at our CPU temp, 44, 46 degrees Celsius, very cool. I do have a dual radiator 280 millimeter liquid cooler on this CPU. It is not remotely stressed at all. Take a look at our real-time frame rate, 60 frames per second. In combat, and we're about to pull out the minigun here and shoot at these guys, we were dropping down into the 30s. With only a single 1080. Now there's parts here where it's going to drop. You can see it's just dropped down to 53, 55, but it's back up to 59. At ultra detail with two 1080s, is there any point of the game where it will dip below 50? Yes, in some of the populated areas you may still run into some performance issues. You may have to drop God Rays down, you may have to drop anti-aliasing down 1 notch in some of the populated areas. However, hey, that was actually pretty good there. Those things are quite tough. But the performance difference is tremendous. Look at my jumping here. This is completely responsive. There's more to a game than frame rate. It is easy to say, well, the average frame rate is this, or the average frame rate is that. But how responsive? Fallout 4 especially is very, very sensitive to computer performance. There we go, VATs. Let's see if we can get them. With only one card installed, when I would press the space bar to jump, when I would try to move my character quickly, there were oftentimes lag. It's input lag when I press the key and something happens on the screen. With the 2 cards in SLI, the system was much more responsive. I would not want to play this at ultra detail on 1 card at 4K resolution. It was just very, very rough. With both cards installed and running, it's much smoother and it's a much, much better experience. Now, could you run two 1070s instead of two 1080s? Yes. The only issue you run into there is in games that don't scale well with SLI or games that don't support SLI at all, you're stuck with the limitation of only 1 card. If you really want to game at 4K in AAA titles, a pair of 1080s is expensive, but it does provide definitely a premier gaming experience. Now, I'm going to fade this away here in a second and show you the results, but all I will say is that Fallout 4 scales really nicely on 2 graphics cards. And here we are at the results. On a single GTX 1080 card, we average 48 frames per second average with a minimum of 29 and a max of 64. Add a second card in SLI and you get an average of 60 with a minimum of 51. Now, in the average, it doesn't look like that big of a performance increase, 25% average frame per second increase. However, note that Fallout 4 is a special case. Because VSync is forced on due to the physics engine, we're capped at 60, so there's a limit to what the average can be. However, it's the minimum that really counts. 76% faster minimum frame rate, 29 to 51, that is huge. If you think back to when we were in combat with the creatures by the lake, for example, the Mirrorlurks, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, we were dropping down into the low 30 frame per second rate in combat, and the game was slow and sluggish to respond. It was very smooth and very responsive with both cards. That's when it really counts. Busy areas, heavy combat, multiple adversaries, a lot of stuff going on. That's when that minimum frame rate is going to kick in. An average frame rate of 48 frames a second on one card doesn't mean much when half the time is spent running around not doing anything. I can tell you from having played this game on both of these for longer than even what you just saw there, and from having actually done it, pressing the keys, input lag, it is a huge difference. I absolutely believe that 76% figure. It is a 1.5 mile difference in terms of playability between the two cards. Now, as I said earlier in the video, if you only have a single 1080, turn the detail down to high and maybe turn God rays off and anti-aliasing down, and at 4K it's much more playable. But if you want ultra detail in Fallout 4 at 4K resolution, yeah, you really do need 2 of these things. It's amazing how much performance it really requires. Like this video if you like it. Don't if you don't. Remember to subscribe to my channel with the big red button down below. Post your questions and comments below the video. And as always, look at the video description. Links to buy Fallout 4. Links to my original playlist on the $4,000 Ultimate Computer Build Series, as well as links to buy GTX 1080s at both Newegg and Amazon are down there. If you like my videos, if you like my contents, go down there and check out my video description and my links. I would be greatly appreciative. Thanks for watching. I will see you in my next video.